Well, once again, thank you guys, y'all, for being with me. Welcome to our weekly Artificial Intelligence and the Law show. Thanks, Ben, Stephanie, and Drew for all being here. I appreciate it. What I wanted to talk about today, and this came out of our AI talk a little earlier today, there's so many possibilities. There's so much you could do with artificial intelligence. There's so much info out there. If I'm a small firm owner, medium-sized firm owner, a legal ops person, it would be easy to get overwhelmed. How do I know where to start with any of this in order to just not, all I want to do is not get left behind, really. How do I know where to start with artificial intelligence? And Stephanie, I'm gonna send this one to you first, because you and I talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So I know everyone's instincts is always to run to the tools, right? And say, okay, what should I buy? What should I use? How do I get started? And I'm just going to encourage everyone to step back and instead think about functions and goals, because we know there's lots of different things an AI tool can do. So for example, if we start thinking about big buckets, it can do legal research. It can draft documents. It can summarize documents. Maybe it helps us brainstorm or think about things differently, analyze a large group of documents and create tables and summaries of those. Like, it can do these different buckets of things. Some AI tools can do one of those really well. Some do a whole bunch of them. So first, I think we just have to back up and say, okay, before you start jumping and buying things, what is it you're trying to accomplish with the tools? Where do you want to maybe dip your toe and get started first in terms of function?
So kind of that same thing we tell people with regular technology is it's not go buy the thing and say, what do I do with this shiny new thing? It's what do you want to do? Is that kind of your experience, Ben, as well? I know you and I have done a podcast on this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had firms, back in the day when firms had their own servers, I had firms, oh, we need a new server. And I'd say, okay, why? And they'd always pause like, what do you mean why? I'm like, well, what problem are we solving? Why are we buying this server? And then, well, I don't know, somebody said I needed a new server. Like,
yeah.
Okay, well, okay, but maybe you do, but why? What are we doing? And so it's kind of the same thing. And I think Stephanie's exactly right. That you don't start with the tool. The tool is just the solution. What problem are we solving here? And I think for firms that are just getting started, I always encourage people, look for quick wins, look for low-hanging fruit. Like, don't try to boil the ocean, right? Look for something simple you can start with. Have it suggest ways to reword your marketing brochure. Have it summarize some email. Have it give you some, ask it what's coming up on my calendar, right? Ask it some low-hanging, easy questions to just see how it does, and that'll often inspire some deeper conversations with it. As opposed to having it, thinking it's going to run your entire law practice on day two.
Yeah, but I want it. I want it to, and I don't mean to just kind of jump ahead. Like I do want it to really like get in and do some stuff for my people and my firm. I want these things to have happened yesterday in a way, and I feel like, me as a person running the firm, I feel like I'm behind. And I want to do more than just rewrite my marketing AI,
That's just the place to start. Once you've done that, then you can say, okay, now what more can you do? Once you're feeling a little bit comfortable with it, because that's a low risk thing too. You're not submitting that to the court, right? And it's something public too, so it's not like it's I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for there is, but it's a low risk thing to start off with. And go from there and build on it. And I do get firms that are super anxious. They feel like they're behind, and I have to tell them, yes, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. So
that's the wave we're trying to ride, right? Is I don't want to stick my neck out and get hit, but I also don't want to put my head in the sand. So I guess kind of throwing this to Drew, how do I? A lot of times when I talk with you, you're one of my more progressive people that I talk to. You're out there on the front end, but how would I start with some of the things in my firm? Like if I want to get my people started as well.
Yeah, I think it's about asking the right questions. I think in so many cases, when we start by talking with somebody, I'm acting as a technologist in almost every call that I'm on, and it's about taking somebody who works that actual role every day and just saying, look, what are your pain points? It's usually one of the first things that I'll try to latch onto, because there's also so many cases where law firms could benefit from non-AI automation, right? Like there's more to this puzzle of how to become efficient in the future than simply buying new AI tools off the shelf, just as you guys have mentioned. And that's a wider, I think, lens than simply, knowing the AI product landscape. Instead, think first about your pain points. Think also about your wish lists, right? Another thing we like to do is dream. So, if you could wave a magic wand and do a thing for your firm, typically we can't all translate that into like the actual technical specs and have someone go build it. But at least when we have that dream, we've got the language to give to a person who might be able to start mapping that out for us. And I think doing that process mapping, that becomes something that we do after we take those first steps. It's pain points, it's wish list. And I think that's where you want to start.
Mm-hmm. So then how do I, and I'm going to go pretty basic here, because I think some of the people watching or listening to this are going to know the answer to this question, but how do I, as a firm, find my pain points? How do I keep track of that? How do I determine that? Stephanie, I think you might be a good one for that.
Well, first, ask your people. So, go to the people engaged in the work every day and say, what takes you longer than it feels like it should? I mean, I've actually reviewed time entries from law firms have sent me bills and said, take a look at this and what do you think? And I've been able to kind of analyze that and say, why is this person touching this thing 5 different points, right? Like and they like reviews and edits keep coming up and come around. So that's one way is, what's taking longer than it should? What feels harder than it should? Where are you repeating tasks? Where are you doing things, the same thing over and over again, but you're not doing it in an efficient way? You're starting from scratch. Where are you tracking information on spreadsheets? This can really tell a lot. When we ask, sometimes we'll find legal assistants and paralegals. The lawyers don't even know this. They're tracking like case information or on spreadsheets. Well, that might be an opportunity to think about that work differently. Where are you using documents and you're using find and replace? So really some basic questions, but once you start digging in, and I also encourage people, use Post-it notes or a big whiteboard and get the team in the room and say, okay, what happens when we do this? Let's say pick a process. It doesn't matter. When we get a new motion for summary judgment in, what do we do first? What do we do second? Then who does what? And you just start mapping it out and literally like put it on a wall. I love the visual. And what happens? Who does this? You'll start seeing opportunities. They'll start popping at you because you'll realize maybe where the inefficiencies are and how you can start doing things differently.
I love this. I asked a question on how do we use AI? How do we start implementing AI? And all 3 of y'all went to, how do you implement technology? It's just kind of we're still doing the basics here. We're still doing the same stuff we did 3-5 years ago.
I still teach Outlook and Word and OneNote and Excel, and I still get people who've been in this business for years and years and years who go, oh my God, that's such a great trick. So I'll say something and they'll be like, I've had so much trouble with that. You just showed me how to fix this. It's like, this is a tool that's been out there for 20 years. This isn't a new tool, but they just learned the feature and it made a big difference for them. So what Drew said earlier really resonated with me because we were doing an AI readiness call with a client this week. And something they said as one of their pain points. And Sam and I looked at each other and we're like, you can just do that with Outlook. Like, they don't need AI for that. Like, there's an Outlook feature that does that. And it's like, problem solved with the tech they've already got. It didn't have to be an AI answer. And so sometimes sometimes the answers are simpler than you would think it might be.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd add on to what Stephanie said is the other question you can ask is, what part of your job, what task in your job do you hate doing? Because that can also maybe identify some potential areas where you should look for improvement, because if they hate doing it, they probably don't do it that well. And so if you can somehow take that off their plate, or at least make it easier, maybe they won't hate it so much. And if nothing else, it improves their quality of life. It makes things better for them, because now they've got a way to do it better, less painfully.
So a thing that I run into a lot, because where we've kind of gotten to is really you need to maintain a tech audit in a sense, a tech on like know what your tech is, know how it connects to your processes. Um, but let's say that I've gone in and I've said like, hey, I've got this pain point. We obviously aren't going to have one pain point. We're going to have a bunch. How do I manage that future state? I have trouble with this a lot. Like, how do I imagine? How do I manage it? How do I know where I'm going and keep doing that in the technology space as a law firm?
Who wants to take that one? I mean, I think it's kind of a project management and prioritization question, right? And strategic question. I mean, it kind of goes back to what is your strategy? What do you want your firm to be, and how do you want to show up for who you serve? There are, we talk about this all the time with the people the law firms that we work with. What do you want to be known for? And some people are like, I want to be known for tech forward. And, other people say, I want to be known as high touch. And maybe you can do both. But my question, it kind of comes back to what client service are you trying to build, and what are you trying to do with your law firm? And then that should help you then prioritize that list that you were talking about when you were like, how do I know where to go and what to get started with? It should all be driven by our strategy. And sadly, this is where a lot of firms need some help, if we're being quite honest, because they're doing exactly what we said at the top. They're just buying a whole bunch of shiny tools, and then they're looking around and they're like, well, now half the people aren't using this one or using this one, or we built a cool thing with that and nobody will use that. So we're coming in and having to pull back and say, wait a minute, we actually have to think about this with a strategy first, and then some goals, and then we go down, and eventually we do get to the tools and to adoption, which is where the real work begins. But it kind of needs to start up here first.
Yeah.
I think what Stephanie addressed is sort of the strategic approach to this, which is, how do I think about setting myself up to be, let's say my vision is to be tech forward, right? I'm to a fault more of a tactical person. So I want to think about, okay, what are the nuts and bolts of how do I actually get there? And one of the things that I think about is kind of Ben and Sam's expertise in cultivating like great information. And so if you can set yourself up also with a pipeline where you can get the information from experts, and the tough part is figuring out who that even should be. And I'm not plugging myself for this at all. I subscribe to a number of newsletters, and that's how I know every morning where to go poke around and figure out. Sam has a workflow set up where he's cultivating news stories using AI. All of us have a different way of doing this, but I think that each of us who imagines if we imagine ourselves to be able to stay up on something like this in such a rapidly changing landscape, you have got to set up something where you're lending or you're leaning on somebody else's expertise and time, whether that is a bot or whether that's another person out in the wild. And the landscape has changed so much of expertise that in many ways you can find this without having to pay an arm and a leg for it too. So, being creative about how you get new information, how you synthesize that information, and how you, make that part of your overall approach, to being tech forward. I think that is another important piece that we can't ignore, even though it feels like that's a little out in the weeds and it's not necessarily business operations. It is certainly something we need to figure out as information gathering and synthesis. Maybe
too, if I could add, I think a lot of law firms are so used to thinking about technology decisions as 5, 10, 15-year decisions, right? Like, Ben was saying, some people maybe didn't update their server, or they're thinking about a new server. But a lot of times we're used to making big, huge tech decisions and thinking this has to be the decision we make for a really long time. I think what we're talking about now, and what we've done even with our team, is we've started saying, actually, we're going to make 12-month decisions because we think we're going to use this tool and it's worth our investment for the next 12 months. But the reality is the tools are changing fast. The landscape is changing fast. It's really hard to keep up with it. And I think that's actually going to be a big shift for firms too, because, just how we buy technology and use technology is going to shift.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things also that the cloud has kind of enabled. We're no longer in the days when you're spending $10,000 to put a piece of hardware in your closet and then you're pretty much committed to it for a while because you just spent you just bought a big thing, Now it's a piece of cloud software, and you can change cloud software as often as you want to. The only challenge is being you may have information lock-in, you may have training headaches. There's you don't want to be changing all the time because that gets annoying too.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly makes it a lot easier where you're not committing yourself necessarily to a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year thing. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think there's value in nibbling instead of thinking you have to eat the whole meal in one sitting.
And to return back to a little bit about what we were saying earlier about how do I even pick, the right products? The ground has moved so much beneath our feet that what Ben is saying of, taking a nibble, what Stephanie's talking about is our teams are approaching, we're taking a piecemeal, short-term approach to these products. The biggest thing, and I think, Stephanie, you already highlighted this, you've got to know what you're buying. Just in terms of the tech specs, like what are these products actually offering? Because when I hear the letters A and I said after one another, I might be building stuff with it in my day job, but I couldn't even tell you exactly how this thing is AI. Where does it start? Where does it end? I think figuring that out and being able to identify the different components of an AI product. Oh, this is actually underneath the hood. Here's a couple of things that are going on here. Is this a chat bot? Is this actually is it a special kind of database? What? Having a little bit of tech savvy that is general, it's not product based, is going to help you pick products better in the future. That's sort of, I think, what we've got to grow towards as well. That's going to help us discern the right directions to go. And as the ground keeps moving, beneath our feet, we can at least be able to identify, I can pick out the primary colors, even if I don't know exactly what it's called at this store, right? It's those kinds of things.
So what I'm pulling out of this is kind of from that first question that we started with of how do we know where to even start, is that we've got kind of plan, educate, and experiment. We've got plan your stuff, educate yourself, get out there and experiment. And I think what I'd like to just quickly go through, because we don't have all the time in the world, is how would y'all go about kind of creating that experiment stage or ability in a law firm that, we don't want to get our neck out there too far. How would you go about kind of like maintaining that experimentation?
I think I'd probably look for those pain points, right? Get your people involved. You've got to talk to people. Don't just assume that, this is what your paralegals deal with. Like, get them in a room and talk to them and find out what it is that they're dealing with. Find out what their pain points are. Look for those potentially easy wins at first, where this doesn't seem, we're not revolutionizing the industry. We're just fixing this task for now.
Right.
And
right.
So, and then you can start researching what products might address that. Do any of our existing, and don't forget to start with, do any of our existing products potentially address that? And then you can implement, and then you also need to ask yourself, what does success look like here? What would it look like for this to be a good thing? Because if you don't know where you're going, pull over and stop because you're there, right? So figure out what winning would look like, and then how can we, and then try a few things that can get you there.
Well, I'll make sure that Stephanie has a chance to go last here, because I think you're going to have some of the best insights on this. But just to add on to what I think Ben has said, which is really close to what I was going to say, you've got existing products. You've got, customer success managers that are already a part of that have a vested interest in you staying with them. And at the same time, they're competing against a lot of really, really moneyed AI programs that are offering pilots. Jump in and do them. I mean, there's so many cases I can think of right now where a law firm does realize something, truly novel for themselves and their workflows because they jumped in and tried something new as well. So, be able to play those commitments kind of against one another. Let your, current product providers know. I'm shopping and, I'm looking for these things. And the good thing is you can lean on some of the expertise that those folks have as well while you try things out and find the right fit really for how you work. Because, there's so many examples where one product might even work for the same exact practice area in a different firm, and it's just not the right fit for you. And so it's dipping the toe, doing the pilots and figuring out from your existing products, where do I have the right offering that really takes care of my needs.
And then kind of lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. And it's only a failure if you didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these guys stole all my great ideas. They said all the things. Start with what you've already got, especially if you don't have to, even if you need to add on a little cost. A lot of these products, they're not requiring you necessarily buy it for the whole firm. So maybe you can just start with a group of people and experiment there and make sure, if you can not get into a long-term contract, but be able to roll up your sleeves and experiment with a few things. And again, love what Ben said, define success, say, what do we want to do with this? What would, because it's not always about faster. I think that we get ourselves a little caught up in like AI is just going to make everything faster. It does tend to speed some stuff up. It also might make work easier. You might spend the same amount of time on a brief, but now you've thought about the next level thing because you weren't worried about these basic things that normally take up your brain space, right? Or maybe you've gotten to a higher level of an analysis. Or maybe you just had more fun doing it. I mean, honestly, when me and my chat, who I affectionately call Lexi, when we do work together, the day ends and I feel energized, not drained. And so success for me is having fun doing my work. So I would encourage people to kind of just get started and try something out.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, y'all, thank you so much for your insights again today. I appreciate y'all being with me and sharing your information and your expertise with the viewers and listeners and all those people. So thank you.